Okay, and we are live. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Forensic Intent. Thank you all for being here. It's been a little while since we've done this, so we're back. And I wanted to introduce, I have a new co-host. Wanted to introduce Rebecca. This is Rebecca Kalyani, and
Hello.
I'm gonna give Rebecca a chance to kind of tell you all a little bit about her. So, Rebecca, what would you like people to know about you?
Well, hello, and thank you guys so much for joining us. We are so glad that you're here. I'm Rebecca Kalyani, or just Rebecca, because that's probably easier to say. I've known Scott for a while. We became friends on X. I would say that our shared interest in true crime really bonded us. He is, as you know, has been a former police officer and so brings a really unique perspective. And as you'll see, I probably bring more of a defense perspective to some of these various cases that we'll cover. And so it'll be interesting because you might find that you're on one side of it or another. And I think what makes me so interested in true crime is I always want to know what people are thinking and why they do what they do. And so that's why I tend to be interested in these cases. Also, of course, justice for the victims, but as well, I really am interested in fair trials for defendants to make sure that their constitutional rights are protected because there's nothing worse, and this is one of my passion points that I'm sure we'll discuss, is than having someone wrongfully convicted be thrown in prison for years because that serves no one. There's no justice for that family. There's no justice for the uh, the accused family, and so we don't want that. That is not justice. That's never justice. And so I am compelled by true crime to sort of see both sides and to look at the big picture. And even when it doesn't seem like there's a big picture to look at, I still want to search out the various angles. I do have a master's in counseling and psychology. And so that also informs what I think and all of those experiences. And so that hopefully is something I can bring to the table as long as being also I'm in the entertainment industry. I wrote a book, so I'm an author, and I'm a singer and a songwriter, and I also do some voiceover work. And so I bring that to the table as well, just kind of knowing how, hopefully, how to host and how to keep it engaging and interesting for all of us and entertaining, because I know sometimes it can get dark or it can get passionate, and that's all good. We like all opinions and want your opinions, and so don't be afraid to voice them. Disagreement is fine. And so but it's just good to have interesting and engaging discussion. So that's a little bit about me.
I 100% agree. And I got to say, Rebecca, I'm really excited to have you here. I think we're going to be a really good blend. You know, as well as I do, that, we sometimes differ on our opinions. And like you just
Yes.
said, differences are good. And I'm like you, I feel like we can all learn something from one another, regardless of, whether we agree, disagree. So I'm really excited to have you here. So
Thank
thanks for
you.
agreeing to do this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a popular case that we're going to start out with. This, I'm sure many of you know it, but there are going to be some who do not. And so this is the case of Sarah Boone. And so the trial just started today, but I'm going to do a quick kind of an intro and a summary, kind of a road so
Mhm.
far, just where we are. And I'm a storyteller, so you'll get it not just with this happened on this date and blah, 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 because who wants to hear that? We want it to be fun and interesting. And so let's start out by saying this. Let's meet Jorge Torres and Sarah Boone. Now, they are a middle aged couple who were living in Orange County, Florida. They lived together in a townhouse and had dated for about 3 years. Now, Sarah had been married before and has this townhouse, and so that's her name, Sarah Boone. And Jorge also had, and both have children who maybe visit them occasionally, but don't necessarily live with them. They do not have full custody. Often, I think when you see couples, you think, oh, they look fine or they're doing fine. But sometimes we don't know what's behind a closed door.
Right.
And unfortunately, both Jorge, also known as George, and Sarah struggled greatly with alcoholism, and both struggled to find jobs and were basically living day to day, paycheck to paycheck, and living on Sarah's alimony, living on an occasional job that Jorge could get at an Ace Hardware. But again, the employment was sort of sporadic. And so, and what they spent their money on, it seems like, was a lot of alcohol, and that will come into the case as well. And so that's a little bit about them. Now, like I said, a lot of couples behind closed doors, you don't know what's behind closed doors. But with Jorge and Sarah, their neighbors knew, because there were lots of calls about domestic violence in those 3 years, sadly. Everything from him stabbing her in the leg, to him choking her, to her hitting him. And we know that domestic violence is just such a terrible, terrible thing in our society. And the problem is that if you don't correct it, if you don't get help or you don't leave, it only tends to escalate and get worse. And then adding alcohol can be a deadly combination. And so, unfortunately, on the night of October 23rd, 2020, that's exactly what happened. Now, there are varying stories about this, and so I'm just giving you the first one that Sarah told, but you'll find that she's told a few stories. So this is kind of the first one she's told, and that exactly right, Scott. It's like, how
Exactly.
how can she tell this many stories? But that usually is not good, by the way. P.S. to anyone who's watching, like, as far as crimes, because everything you say can be used against you and will be used against you in the court of law. So
That's for sure.
yeah,
100%.
right. Right. And so basically, she said they were having a wonderful day. They were doing arts and crafts. She had some dogs. They were dancing with the dogs. They were hanging out, having a kind of just a date day. They had gone the day before and got some big bottles of wine and were kind of finishing them up. And then they decided, and I don't know, tell me, Scott, if you know this, but they decided to play hide and seek. And I don't know any adults who play hide and seek.
I don't know any adults that play hide and seek either. And yeah, I think it was just a matter of them just being extremely intoxicated and decided it would be, yeah, kind of fun to do that. So that's supposedly what they did.
Right. And court records, apparently, or at least the internet's records, and we know the internet likes to internet, have they said that they have done hide and seek games before, and so they've never been deadly like this. But apparently, and I'm not sure who was it, because they both hid. And so I when I saw that, I thought, well, it's hard to determine who was it. But apparently she went upstairs to the shower, and he decided, I think he decided to go into the suitcase. And so she got tired of waiting. So maybe he was supposed to be it, but maybe he thought she was supposed to be it. And so basically, she comes down after a while because she's bored. Like, why isn't he coming to find me? And doesn't know where he is, then sees the suitcase in the middle of the floor. And they've got the suitcase there because they're going to, I think, donate it at some point. And it's kind of an old suitcase and the handles are broken off. And so basically, she sees that he's in the suitcase. And that's kind of where the case begins, because we really don't completely know what happened. And I'm going to turn to you, Scott, and kind of have you summarize what you think happened next, now that I've kind of given the road so far.
Well, I think what happened, honestly, is I think that Sarah had thought that, or yeah, Sarah had thought this out for a while. I feel like she felt like there was an opportunity to be taken there, and I felt like it was intentional, in my opinion, quite honestly.
Mhm.
Although she's only charged with second degree, she's not charged with
And manslaughter.
intentional. Yes, and manslaughter, not charged with intentional homicide. But I just feel like there's more to the story there, and I'm wondering if the prosecution didn't feel like they could make that jump from second degree to first degree, and so they played it safe and just went with second degree and manslaughter. Um, I
So
think.
what do you think happened, as far as what and don't we won't spoil kind of what's coming up in the trial, but
Mhm.
just from your trial watching, what do you kind of think? Do you think that she zipped him into the suitcase, or do you think that he like I don't know. I mean, she'd have
Yeah.
to zip him in, I think.
Well, so Rebecca, here's my take on it. And, we haven't heard all the evidence yet.
Right.
So it's important for us to say that. But my opinion is that they were both highly intoxicated, even though Sarah has
Mhm.
said that they really were not.
Right.
I would disagree with that. I think he was just so intoxicated that he thought, okay, this will be fun. And I think he got into the suitcase. And then I
Right.
think she took the opportunity to zip him in. And then the deed was done. And
Yeah.
then then we go into the whole situation with him not being able to breathe and having the positional asphyxia and all that, which we can talk about in a bit. But that's how I think the whole piece went down. And, I just don't think she cared.
Yeah, and you know what? That leads us right to the openings. I think that's a really good
Mhm.
place to jump in with the openings
Sure.
because there's a really that's why I told Scott to not ruin the surprise because there's something really I mean, some of you might know this because you've been watching the trial, but for those of you who haven't, Scott will tell you about what the state is going to tell you the evidence is going to show, and they've got some pretty strong evidence here. And so, do you want to maybe talk about the prosecutor's opening?
Sure. So the prosecutor's opening, I watched it pretty closely and took as many notes as I could, and I felt like it was a pretty strong opening. I mean, he was very clear in his opening. He made statements like he left her to die, and she watched him take his last breaths. How many breaths did he take? We don't
Mhm.
really know, and this is all being said by the state prosecutor. Um, she made statements, and of course, she filmed it. She made
Yeah, that's
statements.
the surprise, people.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
filmed it. So she
yeah,
was so I'm gonna jump in here for a second.
yeah,
She was
do.
so drunk that she didn't realize she filmed it, and she gave her
Mhm,
phone to the police. And so, we actually have little short snippets that maybe will show, maybe not next time. We'll see, but it's kind of a disturbing video. But it's like 2 minutes of a video, and then she records a little later. It's like 20 more seconds.
mhm.
And so we actually have some of this on video.
We do. And, I don't know about you, Rebecca. I've watched it several times, and
Yeah,
I'm
me
sure
too.
some of our viewers have too. It is highly disturbing, no matter how
Yeah.
many times you watch it. Jorge
Mhm.
is in the suitcase saying, Rebecca, I cannot breathe. I cannot
Yeah,
breathe. And she's saying things like, that's on you. And this is how I
yeah,
feel when you cheat on me, and those sorts
yeah.
of things.
He
And
even
and
says "bleep you" to him at one point.
yeah, she does. She says it twice,
Yeah,
basically bleep you when he's saying, I can't breathe. And she just continues to film it. And these were all things that were brought out by the state in their
yeah,
opening arguments. It was a very, very strong opening. And, I don't want to get out of order here, but
yeah. No, it's fine.
having the video played, because it has been played, you guys, in court, for those of you who haven't watched it, so the jury has seen it. I don't know, and I don't know about you, Rebecca, but I don't know for the life of me how the defense can get past that piece. That is the most
Yeah, and
powerful
we'll
evidence.
definitely talk about that. One
Yeah.
thing that I thought that the state missed out an opportunity to do, and maybe they did this strategically, so I'm not here to Monday morning quarterback, so to
Hmm.
speak, but
Hmm.
they basically said, "Defense, you can't use any videos," because they have a lot of videos too that I believe they're gonna bring out in their case,
Right.
and so we're not gonna let you use any videos, so then the state can't either. So they couldn't play the video in opening, and I thought
Right.
that would have been really compelling for them to play it. I mean, it's fine that they read it. It's totally
Sure.
fine, but I just thought they should have maybe played it, for everybody. But, he did read it, and it was powerful, but you're right, they showed the video today,
Hmm.
and that's the thing. And, um, any other things you wanna say about the state's opening?
A
You
couple more
covered it
things.
well.
So thank you. Thank you. So yeah, William J., who was the assistant state attorney, is the person that did the opening for the state. He
Right.
made very, very good points too, that there was no 911 call, you guys, at first. It took her hours to call 911. I don't know exactly how many, but she did not call 911 at first. She calls a friend, and then
She
the
calls her
friend,
ex-husband.
ex-husband, right. And
Yep.
then the ex-husband ultimately convinces her to, you know, you need to call the police on this. Um,
But she still
so
doesn't call the police is what it looks like. She kind
right,
of waits for him to come over.
She does. She waits for him to come over, and
which is only about
um,
5 or 10 more minutes, but
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so ultimately, she does make that call, but it took a while. The other things that the state brought up in their opening was that you will not hear any tears from her during the
mhm.
during the initial pieces of this. There was no sorrow shown. She told them essentially that she fell asleep after they had been drinking. She fell asleep, and basically he was in there for close to 11 hours, I think, Rebecca.
Yeah. Yeah, it was about
Yeah.
11. The cell phone data so far shows about, and the video, because they use Celebrite, which is cell phone software to track all
Hmm.
movements on your cell phone, everything from text messages to photos to videos to audio messages, and to steps to location data. I mean, I'm sure
Exactly.
many of you have watched trials, but I just think that's so scary to think about all the information that someone can gain from our cell phones. And so we actually do have kind of a timeline. It was about 11 o'clock, and there are
Hmm.
a couple of witnesses who basically jumped in and said, two neighbors who were next door who said they heard a loud sort of thud around 11. The videos are around 11:12 and 11:20, I want to say,
Hmm.
PM.
That
And
sounds right.
so, and she got up. So I don't know if we can characterize it as her not calling the police out of spite. I think I could make a good argument as a defense attorney that she just didn't call the police because she didn't wake up. So she either passed out upstairs or fell asleep, or maybe a combination of the two. And it looks like her ex-husband was trying to call her the next day for hours, couldn't get a hold of her until about noon to see if she was going to pick up their son or not,
Right.
because she was sort of unreliable as a mother, sadly, because of the alcoholism. It sounded like,
Definitely.
otherwise she was a good mother. She had sort of half custody, if you will. And so, but the alcohol made her maybe not always be reliable to pick up her son. So he was calling her to say, hey, Sarah, are you going to pick him up today, or should I do it? Because they live about 5 minutes apart from one another.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
I think he got a hold of her around noon, and then she went downstairs. So I don't know if I would say she didn't call out of malice. I just think she was in a drunken stupor and didn't even know he was in the suitcase.
That could very well be. You could very well be right on that. So overall, just kind of closing out my piece with the opening, I thought it was strong.
Yeah.
I thought they outlined it very well. And Rebecca, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the defense's opening, so let's
Yeah.
jump into that if you're ready.
Yeah, the other thing I want to say about the state's opening, though, was
Hmm.
one thing, and I've seen a lot of lawyers say it. Prosecutors are often not storytellers, and he had a great story to tell here. And I thought that he kind of went a little long and kind of lost. I wonder if he lost the jury at all
Hmm.
toward the end, because he kind of started talking about some random things that I thought, why is he putting this in? And then the other piece to the opening that was kind of a disappointment was, if you watch the trial, and poor Scott really had to work hard to watch these openings, because these lawyers don't know what a microphone is, and they would like walk away from the podium and it'd be like, ha, 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 ha,
Oh
ha,
my
ha.
gosh.
It was like you could hear nothing
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
prosecution's opening. It was terrible.
Yeah, the opening statements are huge. I mean, it's
Right.
it's it's not evidence, obviously, in a court of law, but it is a chance to really grab the jury. And you're absolutely right, Rebecca. If they go too long, sometimes you do start losing the jury. They lose interest. And I would agree with you. I felt like he went a little bit too long on that, but
And he
overall,
just
I
laid
felt like
out
it
the
was fine.
facts. It wasn't like he told, I told a story when I introduced this case, and it
Yeah.
made you want to know more about what was going to happen. As where he just said, on February 23rd, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And that was kind of what I heard from some lawyers that several of us probably watch on YouTube. Like, he should have
Mhm.
told a story. He had such an easy case to tell a story with. The defense and did a much better job, which leads us into the defense, of telling a story. That defense attorney has been both a public defender, James Owens,
Mhm.
and a prosecutor as well, but the elected public defender in another county in Florida, and then an elected prosecutor, and now in private practice for over 35 years. And you can kind of see how seasoned he is. Now, if any of you are watching the trial, I've got to take a step back for a second. If any of you are
Mhm.
watching the trial, you'll probably say he looks kind of disorganized or unprepared. And that is true to an extent, but it's not his fault. See, what we didn't tell you about this case is Sarah Boone is very verbal and very bright. However,
Right.
she probably has some I'm trying to word this nicely, probably some mental health issues and really cannot get along with anyone to the point that she was awarded 8, count them, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 court appointed public defenders over these
Yes.
4 years. 16 continuances in this trial over these 4 years. And she wrote letter after letter to the court that became public record that YouTubers went wild with because those letters were compelling and interesting. Did you read any of the letters, Scott?
I read a few. Yes.
The last one was 58 pages and it was insane. And so the judge finally had enough, Judge Michael Kranick, and he said, you know what? You've gone through 8 lawyers. We've had all these continuances. I can't do this. You're representing yourself. So before this happened in June and July, she was representing herself, did not know what to do, was actually doing an okay job for a layperson, but clearly was at a disadvantage. But I'll give the state credit. They tried to be as ethical as possible and to help her out. I thought they were negotiating with her, making sure that things were going well, and really trying. The judge was bending over backwards, but if you don't know, you don't know. And so, and she also clearly has never watched any true crime, so she didn't even know what things were like objections or what hearsay was. I mean, things that Scott and I know. And
Mhm.
so so things that you probably know out there. And so that was really frustrating to kind of see. And so I was worried that she wasn't going to get a lawyer and she was going to represent herself. Because did you see any of that, Scott? Any of those hearings?
I saw some of them. Yes, I did. Yeah. And I was worried too that she was not going to be able to get an attorney. And yet somehow she manages to put together this poster, which we will probably show to you
Yeah,
guys
do
the
you want to
next
show it?
time. If I can get it to be shown here, it's on my phone. And you guys, I'm so sorry. I couldn't get it to work on the split screen thing. So we'll get that worked out. But that's not going to show well at
I
all.
can see it. We can see it a little. And if you just want to read it, and we will, you know what
Yeah.
we'll do? We will, Scott can post the photo later in community
Yes.
notes if you want to see it, or
Totally.
the link to the Facebook. It's just from like Florida Coast News Facebook page. You've probably already seen it as well. If you haven't, all you have to do too is type in Sarah Boone ad for attorney and you'll be able to see it. But
Hmm.
even if Scott reads it, it's worth reading just because she surprisingly did a really good job. She could have been a very talented graphic artist, marketing personnel person, something.
Yeah, it's very well done. So it's all in black and white, and it basically she posted this, you guys. I believe Rebecca, wasn't it in the lunchroom at the
It
jail?
was in a letter, and she asked the judge to post it in his break
Yes.
room. And then she, because all the letters are public, the YouTubers went with it, Court TV, Law and Crime, everybody
Hmm.
posted this ad. And so she had millions of people seeing this ad. And so that's how she got her new attorney. And
That's how she
how was
got
she
him.
persuasive, Scott? You want to read it?
Sure. So it's basically says inmate seeks attorney. Are you looking for a prosperous challenge? Ready for your close up on national TV? Are you zealous with a side of keen? Show the world who you are with your original creativity, extraordinary expertise, confident ingenuity. Qualifications must include being trustworthy, honest, passion driven, open minded, exceptional, problem solving skills, client inclusion at all times, learn, I can't read
Learning
that.
orientated.
Orientation, yes,
Yep.
collaboration, extreme efficiency in listening, communicating, and understanding, dedication to success, possessing a winning mindset, capability of excellence in representation, committed, maintain faith in the client and case with the ability to think differently and overcome all circumstances. Epic opportunity awaits Sarah Boone. And basically, she signs herself as Orange County Correction Department number 20005623, invest in the oppressed, believe. And that is what was posted. And that prompted her attorney to jump in and join the parade in this.
Yes, and the ad also, if I remember correctly, has stars on it, and was
It
she wrote
does.
it by hand and did the whole some underlining and some different italics, I would say.
Yeah, she did do that. And I'll make sure that I post this for everyone after we're all done today. I'll get it posted so people can go to the site and see it. But she did a good job and it worked.
Yeah. Yeah, and
And
it
so
worked,
now,
and so
yeah.
James Owens is her defense attorney, and then he's got 2 other people that joined him on this case. He said one is, maybe they're friends of his, um, Mr. Henderson, I'm trying to remember his name, and then, Mr. Beck. I think it's Alex Beck, and then
Mhm.
somebody Henderson, and they both joined, and if you know it in chat, feel free to put it. I should have known it, I apologize. And
Same here.
basically they are all there, but here's the thing that makes this so fascinating, and which kind of worries me about this case, and that is that they jumped in around August 7th, and the trial, wait, I'm sorry, it was August 29th, and the trial was starting October 7th. And if you know anything about trials, which many of you do, they take months and months and years. And there's so much evidence here, so many texts, so much to go through, so many hospital records. And they had about 30 days to prepare for this trial. And they even asked for a continuance, just a short continuance, and the judge denied it. And I understand why he did, but the problem is that it could come back to bite this judge if she's convicted, because if
Yes.
they feel like they didn't have enough time to prepare, even the state didn't oppose a continuance. And so that's why they look so disorganized and unprepared, in my opinion. And the judge and the state, to be fair, have tried to bend over backwards, extending all the deadlines that need to be extended, giving them leeway. Like there was some things that were not turned in at the correct time for discovery, but again, it's just there's so much for them to go through, and if you've got thousands of pages, you can only do so much.
Exactly. And, Misty in Arizona just made a really good comment. They parachuted in, which
Hi,
essentially they did.
Misty.
And yeah, hi, Misty. Thanks for joining us, by the way.
Yeah.
And thanks to all of you for being here today. So my point is they didn't have, as Rebecca just said, they didn't have much time. And I absolutely do think that if she is found guilty, I think something will probably be filed to the effect of we didn't have enough time to provide get ready for a proper defense and present
Right.
a proper.
And I think the court will go with it, by the way,
I
because
do.
it's a very black and white issue. It's
Yep.
not one of these that I mean, you could say it's at the judge's discretion, but also considering there was a hurricane, Milton, that happened right in the middle of that,
Mhm.
them preparing for trial, I think that could be another piece. The judge should have absolutely just given it would not have hurt him, in my opinion, to say, "All right, we're gonna start on January 7th." Like,
Right.
nothing wrong with that. This would have really, I think there would have been no downside. But what was Misty's comment? I don't want to miss that.
Misty's comment was they just parachuted in,
Oh yeah.
essentially. Yeah,
Okay.
they
Okay. Got it.
parachuted in. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
which they did, and
And that
so
was so nice of them. They're doing this for free, essentially.
right,
Um, and so can you imagine, like, you're being saddled with thousands of hours of work? And they basically said in court interviews, we're doing this because we believe that everybody has a right to be represented, even if they're difficult, even if they're like the worst person ever. And they're so right about that. And I think the judge is punishing Sarah, but really he's punishing them, not her at this point, because she's not doing any of the work. They are.
right,
So
right.
we'll have to see how that goes. But again, I will say, having said that, and then we'll jump into the opening for the defense. Having said that, this trial is going lickety split, like fast, fast,
Yeah,
fast. And it was only supposed to be 3 weeks, and the state might wrap up their case. And tune in, guys, to Law and Crime Court TV. Lawyer, Emily D. Baker, some of our favorites. If you want to stream some of this trial, and it's Sarah's testimony. She's going to testify. She's going to have to, which we'll get into right now. And so you do not want to miss this, because I wonder what story she's going to tell next.
I know it, and we all know how dangerous it is for someone to take the stand in their own defense, especially in
Right.
this case, because she's going to open herself up to horrible cross examination. But honestly, you guys, I'm not surprised. that
Yeah.
she is going to take the stand in her own defense. It does not surprise me at all.
Right. And so let's jump into the defense opening.
Yeah.
Basically, he starts out, he tells a good story. He talks about, I even took a little of his opening about struggling day to day. He does mention that they were very codependent on each other on a daily basis. And I also think that's true. And sometimes that codependency can cause toxicity if there's too much togetherness and if there's domestic violence linked into that, it's just a recipe for
Mhm.
disaster, essentially. Um, he talked about how there's two sides to every story. He asked them to keep an open mind. He wanted to read the instruction about reasonable doubt, but the judge said no. So he just kind of talked about what reasonable doubt was. And the judge didn't do that to be mean. It's just that that's usually what happens in closing. And since the jury doesn't have the instructions, I understood why. But I understood why he wanted to explain what it meant to them as well to give them an idea. He basically talked about how she is an abused woman. And he said that they're going to show that in their opening. Um, he said that it's basically that they were violent toward each other, that the police were called on multiple occasions. I kind of outlined their opening for you in the introduction in some ways. But what's
Mhm.
interesting is they're going to try to use battered spouse defense. And if you guys have been watching some cases recently, like Ashley Benefield or Marsha Thompson, those are both out of Florida, they both used battered spouse and had different results. And so, but battered spouse is a really tricky thing. And we'll talk about that in a minute.
Mhm.
So they're either going to try to use battered spouse or self defense. And the thing is Sarah's going to have to testify to say, I was in fear for my life that night. I was being attacked. I had no other choice. The defense does acknowledge that this is a quote, unique form of restraint. And I was like, that's one way to say it. That
Mhm.
really surprised me. But he's right, that is true, and it's a unique weapon, to zip someone in a suitcase. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this, have you?
I have not seen anything like this. This
Mm.
is the first time I've seen anything even close to this on this kind of a situation. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and so, basically, he basically talked about how he wants everyone to keep an open mind. They're gonna have some experts come in and testify about the battered spouse and to listen to Sarah, to hear her out, and he just kind of left it at that and said, "Just we appreciate you, and we just hope that you'll wait to hear all the evidence before you make up your minds," and I absolutely think they should. And it sounds like from court observers who are actually there, they are an attentive jury. There's only 6 of them and several alternates. And so I believe they're going to do that. Most juries do that. And so that's where we ended with the defense opening. Both openings were probably around an hour. They did get the audio working better for the defense opening. So if you do go back and listen, that's a little easier, thank goodness, but not much easier, but a little. So put your headphones in, maybe. But it is a little easier. And so we'll have to see. Scott, do you want to tell them if you know, and I'm not putting you on the spot, so if you don't,
Sure.
just say it, what they say the overt act is that led her to either use battered spouse or self defense?
I'm trying to remember and it's escaping my brain right now. I do know what it is, but if you know, go
Yep,
ahead and put
I
it out
do.
there because I can't recall right off the bat.
You guys, the overt act is him sticking his fingers out of the suitcase,
Where'd it
trying
go?
to get out. I mean, no, that can't be. That's I could see if he had unzipped the suitcase and was like climbing over the edge or something, but like if you just like peek your two little fingers like this out of the suitcase and are trying to unzip it,
Yeah.
I don't know that's gonna fly.
I don't think that's going to fly at all. And I just don't think the jury will buy that at all, Rebecca. No way.
I mean, how can they? I mean, so here's the thing, a battered spouse defense is real, no question. People go
Sure.
through horrific things. And so we're not here to minimize that or to judge people as far as what they've needed to do. But um, she had other options. She could have gone to her ex-husband's house. He was surprisingly very supportive. He had
Yes.
she had gone to his house before. Um, she could have called the police. There are some body cam images where she she actually saw the same police officers come out several times, and the police just they even charged him and arrested him. And then like several battered spouse spouses, she bailed him out. And so it it's just the way of the cycle, I think, right, Scott?
It's the way of the cycle, and that's one of the reasons that battered spouse is so tough because,
Yeah.
a lot of people do have the mindset of, okay, well, why couldn't she just leave? Why didn't she go
Right.
somewhere? She's gone
Right.
somewhere before. Why didn't she do it this time? You know, and there's arguments to be made on both sides, you guys. I
Right.
mean, depending on the elements of the domestic violence that's going on within that home, there might be very well be reasons like why someone might be too scared to leave because they are under such
Right.
control. It doesn't strike me that way with Sarah's case because she had
No, I
left
think that
before.
is that way. I agree. It is that way because there are some body cams where he stabbed her in the leg and he choked her. Um,
Sure,
so
sure.
I do think that is she might I think she could make a case she was scared to leave. I think um but he could also make that case if he were alive.
Hmm.
Um and then some
Definitely.
backstory that's not going to be in the court record because it's just too prejudicial is that his brother like almost beat him up to a pulp when Sarah told the family that she was being abused. And then his one of his brothers, I guess, is either on trial or has been convicted of murdering his girlfriend via domestic violence. And so it really is a dysfunctional, complicated situation. I feel for their family, don't get me wrong, but I think it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to be able to get in with body cam stuff. And I think some of the abuse was well documented. Some of the neighbors heard them fighting, heard some of this. But the difference here is that what happened that night. And right now, it, she's basically saying everything was going fine. And so that's why I don't think it's going to work.
Yeah, yeah, I would
If he had
agree.
been coming to her and threatening her or, trying to choke her or trying to push her against a wall, something like that, um, I could see more of it, her tricking him to get in the suitcase and something, maybe, but
Maybe.
maybe, but again, something else I wanted to bring up in this case too is yeah, and you guys tell us what you think of this. She was
Mhm.
offered a plea deal and it would have been 15 years. And that's, I think, what she could get with manslaughter. Um, but I could be wrong on that because they've said the minimum sentence is 22 and a half years. But I think if she was convicted of manslaughter, it would be closer to 15. But
Mhm.
maybe the suitcase would be an enhancing, cruel, and unusual enhancement. I don't know. Do you
Mhm.
know at all about that?
I don't know on that piece, but I
Yeah.
I honestly, and this we may differ on this, Rebecca. I think one of the reasons that she didn't take the plea deal is because, and this is just my opinion, you guys, but
Mhm.
this is what we're here for, is to talk opinions as long
Yep.
as, as long
Yep.
as we're all respectful.
Exactly.
I feel like she is a very narcissistic person. And I felt
Agreed.
like she kind of wanted her day in court just to be, for the exposure and that sort of thing. That's kind of part of my take on it. And
Yeah.
maybe she felt like she was going to take the stand all along because she's apparently said she's going to take the stand.
Right.
Maybe she honestly feels and felt at the time like she could talk her way out of this. I don't
Right.
know. Some people do think like that. I agree with Misty though. She's crazy
Mm.
in my opinion for turning down that deal.
Right.
Um, a couple of things I want to bring because we've got a couple of really good comments here. So I'm just going to
Yeah,
go
please
there
read
right
them.
now,
Yeah.
Rebecca,
Love it.
so that we
Yeah,
don't
we wanna hear all your
miss them.
comments.
Yeah. So Misty makes a very good point. If it was an abusive relationship and he had gotten out of the suitcase, he may
Yeah.
very well have beaten her for zipping him up. And I think that's a
Good point.
very good point because
Mhm.
clearly they had both been arrested for domestic violence
She'd
in the
never been
past,
arrested to my knowledge.
or
I think he
they've been
was.
called on. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
But he
exactly.
was, yep. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for clearing that up. Also, Sonia, who's been a friend of the show for a very long time,
Yeah.
says he had bruises, and I wonder if she hit him or threw him down the stairs, which also is something that we may see brought into the picture here. He
We
did have,
already have actually.
yeah, we have. And he
Yeah,
already
yep.
had, he had a lot of contusions on his body. So
Mhm.
was he hit with a baseball bat? Was he
Yeah.
thrown down the stairs? So yeah, what do you think, Rebecca?
Yes, we saw in the medical examiner testified and basically said that his two fingers there was major bruising, and I think she was saying the defense in the defense opening maybe she hit him with a bat. So to me, then how could he even get out of the suitcase if she had hit him with a bat? And so to me, I might argue if I'm the state that neutralized any threat. Maybe they argue that in closing or something because she's saying, I was afraid for my life. He was trying to get out. But if she's hitting his fingers with the bat, and if the suitcase is upside down, because in one of the videos, there's that. Do you remember that where it's sort of flipped,
Yes, I do
Scott?
remember that. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if he could even unzip himself. Like if you're upside down, I can't really visualize it. So if you're upside down, maybe that's, yeah, I don't think you could unzip yourself, right?
I don't think so either. I think it would have been virtually impossible for him to do
You'd have
that.
to you'd have to get your fingers out of the suitcase and underneath the
Sure.
suitcase and or I don't know. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to think if he could do it at all, but I
Ye
can't see it.
Well, and I think if he was able to do it, he would have done it, clearly.
Yeah.
So
Oh, good point.
clearly
Very
he
good
was not
point.
able. Yeah, yeah,
That's
clearly
funny.
he was not able to. Sonia's saying, "Yes, I believe that she will maybe take the stand tomorrow." That's a very good
Yep.
possibility.
Probably tomorrow.
So tune in for that, you guys, because that's gonna be very interesting.
Yeah, let's
It's
go back to the plea
very
real quick
risky.
though,
Yeah,
because he
do.
was offered a plea of 15 years, which is an excellent plea because she's already served 4
Mhm.
years because almost 5 because she's been in jail since 2020 since all this happened. And so if she had to serve say 65 to 85% of her sentence, she would have been out in maybe 6 years, maybe 8 at the
Mhm.
most, but probably they say about 7. And so think about that. She's 46 and so if she's already served 5 years, she would have been out like in her early 50s.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if she gets convicted of second-degree murder, I mean, she could spend the rest of her life in jail. She could spend minimum 22 and a half years. I bet the judge would sentence her more like to 35. That's just my own take. So, I mean, then she's going to be like, I don't know, 56, 76, 80, somewhere in there.
Mhm.
Maybe less because of good behavior. But you get what I mean. Maybe 70.
I do. And since we're talking about what she could serve and talking about penalty, let's just go down this road right now because I want your
Yeah.
opinion on this, Rebecca, and I don't want to put you on the spot either, but
No, it's
you
fine.
know, Florida is a death penalty state.
Yeah.
And so what do you I mean, some people are talking, well, maybe they should ask for the death penalty, that sort of thing. So what's
Well,
your
it's too
thought on
late
that?
now, for them to ask for the death penalty. They would have had to have done it beforehand, and
Right.
definitely not it's not a death penalty case because she, I don't think there was intentionality in it. I know that the video shows some premeditation, but because she was so drunk, you can hear her slurring her words. That's why I think they didn't charge it as first degree because of the
Mhm.
domestic violence. Even first degree, often the only time you see the death penalty is with really cruel and unusual circumstances, torture. Well, anyways, we can't. I sorry. I
Yeah,
we'll be careful about what we say on YouTube, but there might have to be some essay, some other things that put it over the top of say your everyday sad death. And
very
so
egregious.
yeah, it'd have to be, and
Mm,
I'm not for the death penalty. Scott might disagree, and we can have that discussion at some point. But and
sure.
however all of you feel, I respect how your opinions on that. But I don't think it's necessary in our day and age anymore. But she would probably not qualify.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I
yeah.
would
I
agree.
don't even think first degree because just the domestic violence. I actually where do you think will fall? And we can change our minds next week if we're going to talk about Sarah Boone again.
Mhm.
So it's not like we're locked into this. And feel free, Sonia, Misty, everyone else, if you want to tell us like what you guys think is going to happen next, or we want to read your opinions and your comments. We certainly will. Um, and respond to them as we can. But what do you guys think? And Scott, what do you think as far as what do you think she'll be convicted of if she's convicted?
I believe she'll be convicted of second degree murder. I do.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I do.
I think she'll
Um,
be convicted of manslaughter because I think if she can get in the domestic violence, there's someone on the jury, as we know, from I'm reading courtroom observers, ex posts and stuff, and who is actually a survivor of domestic violence. Not
mhm.
sure how they got on the jury, but they are on the jury, and so that person or anyone else could say, well, you know, there is such a thing as jury nullification. Like maybe she's gone through enough suffering. Now, I don't think that's going to happen in this case, but stranger things have happened.
Stranger things have, and the bottom line is, I mean, I've been through a lot of jury trials myself, and I've watched a lot of trials through the years. And the bottom line is this: you never really know what the jury until you know what the jury. You never really know for certain what they're thinking, and
Right.
so I could see them going down the manslaughter road, but I could also see them saying, this was pretty heinous what she did,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I could see them going down the second degree road too. So it's going to be really interesting where that
But if
goes.
they can't agree, my guess is they split because we just saw
Correct.
that case in Florida of Ashley Benefield. And again, it didn't fit, in my opinion, the complete and ever. I know this is a hot take, y'all, and I bet many of you are going to disagree with me, but I didn't think it was battered spouse either or self-defense because while he might have been there, she invited him over and she anyways, we don't need to get into all the details, but basically
Sure.
it didn't sound like she was being choked or being like imminent fear. She had the gun. She had to go back and get the gun instead of retreat. There were a lot of things that and they still convicted her of manslaughter. And yet I mean that case was different. There was not a lot of domestic violence. There hadn't been for 3 years. They were seeing each other every day.
Mhm.
So I could see why the jury didn't buy it, but still there was some domestic violence. And so Scott's right. You never know how a jury's going to fall. But I also think that maybe if they can't decide or some of them feel some empathy for her, they might say, I just can't go with second degree. Like she's she's worthy of some parole. I know they're not supposed to know the sentence, but I think they
Mhm.
probably will. Well, I shouldn't say they'll look it up because that's not fair, but I wonder if they would get curious or if they've seen some true crime enough to know, like, that she might, be better off with, say, manslaughter if they wanna give her a chance because they might say, "This wouldn't happen again." You just never know what goes into the thinking of the jury.
You really don't. You really don't.
They're not supposed to take any of that into consideration, but sometimes they do, and it seems
Mhm.
like, even things like personality and stuff, like, sometimes people and it's like, well, those are the wrong things to take into consideration, but they do anyways.
They do. They do. So, Rebecca, we are starting to get down to close to an hour
Yeah,
here.
perfect.
We've got about 8 minutes left.
Yeah, you
And
guys, we're so
so,
thankful that you joined us and we just want you to know that we're just kind of starting out and so feel free to give us any comments. I have a thick skin. You can always give constructive feedback and let us know what you like and what you'd like to see if there are certain things. We're always open to covering different cases that you want to see. I know people probably want to talk about the Menendez case. We were kind of brainstorming some of the cases
mhm,
that people are into. Idaho, of course, is a popular one. Delphi, I feel like I'm going to be a little less knowledgeable, but I have been following it. But there's so much
mhm.
to keep track of. That might just be more of an opinion talking case and hearing what your opinions are because we're not able to even see the trial, so it's kind of a little more challenging to say this witness, that witness. Here's what happened in opening, even though people are doing a good job. But we can still cover that case. We can keep we I think we should cover Sarah Boone for the next week because there's going to be more to talk about, especially if she testifies. And now that everyone has the backstory, we will people will feel more included. Another case we were kind of thinking about was maybe, of course, Karen Reed. When that comes up, we know there are going to be hot opinions there, so
Oh,
that's
big
cool.
time. Big time. Yeah,
I bet Scott
that's
and I might even disagree on that one.
oh my gosh, that's one of the most hotly divided cases that I can recall in quite some time. So, one
Yeah,
thing that Carrie, talking about other discussions, one thing that Carrie
yeah,
Gold brought up is
yeah. Hi, Carrie.
she would like to have a discussion regarding death penalty down
Oh,
the
great.
road. So, yeah,
Yes,
that
we'll
would be
do
a
that.
fun
We'll
one.
put that on the list. And if
Yeah.
there are cases that you guys are like, I want to discuss that are maybe not headline making cases, I am one of my talents is research, and I'm happy to
Mhm.
put in some time to read some articles to share that with Scott. We'll get up to date. Um, we might not be as comprehensive as but we'll definitely put in the work. I'm happy to watch some videos on cases. So if there are some cases where you're like, can you bring attention to this case? Because we hope that we grow, and we'd love for you to share the show, and to like and to comment. We definitely want to build this up as a community, and it's for you. And so, feel free to always bring your ideas, always bring what you want to see, and we are definitely here to interact and to listen.
Absolutely. No, I echo that 100%. And yeah, we really do appreciate you guys supporting us and being here today, and hopefully in the future. Just remember to hit the like and subscribe if you haven't already done that, because that really does help things. And yeah, it's gonna take a little bit of time for me and Rebecca to get to know how each other works a little bit
Yeah.
on this. This is our first time doing this together. So, but I don't know. I feel like we're going to be a great team, and we really
Yeah, it was
appreciate
fun.
all
It
of
was
your
really
involvement.
fun.
A lot
Yeah,
of
it was so fun. It was we I think it'll be a great thing, and like I said, whatever you guys have to say, I have a thick skin, and you can always do that.
fun here.
Also, I do have a YouTube channel as well. It's Rebecca Kalyani. I'll give Scott the link to post, and or maybe I'll just he can post my website link. But basically, I do some interesting things. I haven't done a lot of true crime yet, because even though it is one of my passions, I sort of have a unique kind of gift and ability in that I have some limited vision, as many of you might be able to see. So I can't see it all out of this eye, and I see some out of this eye. And
Mhm.
so because of that, I sort of try to educate people on how blind people do things, and it makes for an interesting channel. I also sing and play the piano on my channel and cook. So it's a little bit different, but it's a lot of fun. People seem to like it, which is great. And so I definitely would love for you to check it out. And it's a little bit lighter than the true crime. I might, as an author, start doing some fictional book reviews of some mystery novels, just because I like to read, and I know probably many of you do as well. But I'd love for you to check it out. And again, it's a little different than this, but I think that makes things interesting.
Absolutely, I 100% agree.
Cool.
Well, I think with that, we'll go ahead and close this episode out, you
Yeah.
guys. And I agree. I think we do need to do some more on Sarah Boone down the road.
Yeah.
We will. We
Probably
will.
next week,
Yeah.
because and
Yeah.
that's kind of how we're planning to do the show. Just one final thing is, we're going to try to do the show once a week, and
Mhm.
45 minutes to an hour. We're flexible though, so don't feel like, oh my gosh, I can't make a comment if it's at an hour. We'd love to hear your comments. Don't worry about that.
Yep.
And so that's what we're going to do for now. We're always open to changing the format, or whatever. And if you just follow us on social, we'll always make sure to put out the times and the links, so you
Right.
know where to go. And again, we both comment on other things on social. And if you want to get to know us more, that's a fun way to do it. And it's a fun way for us to get to know you. I love interacting on X. I do it all the time on many different
Here.
topics. So
Yep.
it's fun.
Same here. Same here. That's kind of how this whole thing came
Yeah.
together. Is yeah, with some of the guests that we've had in the past, is just through interaction on X, and
And we will have guests too. We'll have kind
we
of a
will.
combination of guests
Yep.
and of just us talking to each other. It'll just kind of depend on the cases, on what you guys want to see, and we'll just sort of have a blend and kind of figure it out as we go. But I suspect in a couple months this will be like a well-oiled machine.
I think so too. So we are going to go ahead and end the stream. Rebecca, stick with me though, because I want to
Yep,
chat with you a little bit afterwards behind the
sounds
scenes.
good.
So you guys, thank you so much for
Thank
being
you
here,
again.
and we will see you guys next time. We'll be posting when we're going to go live again here real soon. Take
All
care,
right.
everyone. Thanks
Bye-bye.
again.
Thank you.